What's the best way you've seen someone rebel against school rules? This was probably around 2001 to 2002 or so. I ran an illicit unfiltered internet access cartel out of my school library. So my school had what was then considered high-speed internet. It was like 3 or 4 megabytes. But it was fast for the time. The cost, however, was that it was highly filtered and most sites that weren't directly school related were blocked. So, in our driver's ed class we had a driving lab before they let you drive the real car with the insurance and the hitting things and whatnot. You had to demonstrate proficiency on what was basically the world's most boring video game. They had a wheel and pedals and whatnot set up. And you get missions where you had to drive around a fictional town obeying all traffic laws. So, one day I had finished my mission and was sitting and waiting for the lab to end when I noticed a sticker on my monitor. It had what looked like a username/password combo sitting at the login screen of the computer board. I tried it for shits and giggles, and it actually worked. I don't remember the password, but I do remember the username was sitalab7. So anyway, after poking around a bit, I realized that this account didn't have any internet filtering on it, and had local admin rights on the computer. Duck yeah. Score. I used it for a while, to do random shit online. Airbombs World. Newgrounds. That kind of stuff. Well, one day a friend was bitching about the filter. So I logged him in, and let him go ham. It then occurred to me, that this was a service people could use. People always wanted to hop on Yahoo Chat or hit Newgrounds, or whatever. So I started selling internet access for $1/5 minimums. I only had 3 rules. 1. No porn. 2. Keep another window open on schoolwork and switch over if somebody's coming. 3. Keep your ducking mouth shut. If you get caught, you're on your own. When somebody would buy my service, I'd go to their computer, do some hacker looking shit, then log in using the username and password I had found. Well, word got around, and I became the library's internet dealer. I was rolling in snack bar money. Eventually, a couple friends wanted in on it, and since I couldn't be in the library all the time, I gave them the info in exchange for 10-20% of their take. We had basically around the school clock rotation of unfiltered internet dealers. I have no idea how we kept it a secret for so long. But eventually, the hammer came down, somebody got busted looking at porn, and squealed like a stuck pig. One by one my cappers fell until my name came up, and I was summoned to the vice principal's office. I walked in, and the VP, without another word, just looked at me and said City, Lab 7. I knew it was over, but I didn't realize how bad it was. Turns out, that account wasn't just a local admin account, but by some confluence of idiot administration and shitty security, was actually a full domain admin account. But it gets better. The school didn't have its own domain. It was on the city's domain. So that account with admin level access to property tax records, city finances, employee payroll, and God only knows what else was being used by every dumbass kid that wanted to watch flash videos of stick figures getting run over by cars, or talk about how great the band Oasis was. They threatened me with expulsion, and threatened to call the cops and report me for hacking the city's network. The school's administrator stepped in, negotiated with the VP, and offered me a deal. If I'd show them how I got in, and help them plug the hole, I'd get by with a 2-week suspension and a computer ban for the rest of the year. Naturally, I jumped on it. I took her to the driver's ed lab and showed her the sticker still stuck to the monitor. She cursed, then took me back to the VP's office, because I didn't actually hack anything, had no malicious intent beyond snack bar money, hadn't damaged anything, had cooperated with the investigation, and because the method I gained entry was so ducking stupid, they commuted my sentence to 3 days in in-school suspension and a 2-week computer ban. They changed the password and my empire came tumbling down. And that's the story of my rise and fall as the head of a school-wide internet cartel. Kid pissed in the trash can when the substitute wouldn't let him leave to use a restroom. Late 80s. My high school banned tank tops, but they were allowed with something over them. They also banned mesh or sheer shirts, only allowed with something under them. Guy I knew, pretty much every day, wore a tank top with a mesh shirt over it. We had a French teacher who was really bad and most people barely tolerated. It happened a few times that whoever arrived first would stand outside her door as if waiting for her to show up and unlock it, and the rest of the class would just queue up behind them pretending to believe them. Meanwhile the teacher would just be sitting inside wondering where her class was. Edit. To all the people asking if we went to the same school. Pretty sure we didn't. It was not in the US. Funny to hear this happened in other places too. Me and my Spanish class did this once, but the difference was we loved our teacher and just wanted to play a joke on her. We also told her that the whole class was going to skip the next day and she didn't believe us. We skipped, except for maybe 3 kids, and got ice cream instead. We showed up at the end of the period and brought her ice cream too, and she just shook her head. What a woman. She's like a second mom to all of us. I went to a Catholic grade school growing up that had a strict boys hair length policy. It couldn't touch the collar of your shirt and I wanted long hair. So the principal came in one day to talk to the class. When she was leaving the room she called me out for my long hair in front of my classmates. My response was to point to the cross hanging above the door and said Jesus had long hair. She didn't know what to say right away and seemed embarrassed, but then pulled me outside and yelled at me to get it cut. Don't mess with Catholic nuns. Just after the Virginia Tech shooting, when I was in high school, the administration banned backpacks / messenger bags. Purses were okay though. One guy shows up to school with a purse. They suspended him for 2 days. The next day, most of the guys showed up with purses carrying all of their things. They lifted the backpack ban. Edit. Looks like it wasn't just my school either. Back in the 1980s there was one kid in my school, was hardcore into the punk scene. Had a bright blue, 6 feet high, razor thin, stand up straight mohawk. The principal gave him detention for being a distraction, etc. And his parting words that day were and tomorrow. No more blue mohawk. The next day the kid came in with the same mohawk, only bright pink. Senior year, my school banned jackets. A friend was cold, wore his jacket to lunch, and the VP told him to take it off. Friend pulls out the student handbook and asked where it said he couldn't wear it. VP flips for a while and ends up showing him the or anything the administration seems disruptive clause. Friend rolls his eyes but takes off his coat. The next day, friend comes in with the same tweed sport coat the VP wore every day. Not me but my friend's dad. So a good 50 years ago, his teacher told him his tie was the most important part of the uniform and he had to wear it no matter what. That lunchtime he gathered half his school year and the next day, about 100 people turned up wearing nothing but underwear and a tie. Someone stole a key from the janitor. He just left them on his desk. It happened to be a universal key to all the locks, except for the server room. The server room, although had a second hidden door which they found. They came in after school and stole the servers from the school. All the grades and data for the students were on those servers. The teachers had to figure out how to recreate all the students' grades, which honestly they did poorly. Pretty much everyone passed every class. You could just argue for a better grade. A guy I know ran a campaign to lift my old high school's strict policy on facial hair, which is to have none unless religiously exempt, which they gave you a card for that and probably others called the beard badge. He refused to shave and had a banner and shirts made that said with a great beard comes great responsibility, apostrophe. In 3rd grade, early 90s, my brother did not want to participate in some sort of multiple class activity. He just hung around the edges until a teacher approached him and told him, "Now dear, you can't be here without participating." Brother took what she said to heart and waited for a chance to slip away. He made it about 3 miles before a family friend noticed him and drove him the rest of the way home. I remember mom being upset at him, but even more angry at the school for taking 4 hours to notice he was gone when they took a head count after lunch. One day my friends and I had gotten to school early for an extracurricular event. After the event we decided we weren't really feeling school that day and decided to do the 3-hour walk home. One of my friend's mother saw us about 5 hours into the walk. My brother missed enough school during the year that the school required he attend summer school. The penalty for not attending summer school, you'd be kicked out of summer school. So he never went, and they didn't hold him back because he knew all the material. Should've just let him test out of it to begin with. In middle school I had to retake my algebra class because I did basically nothing all year. Even though I got a perfect score, a solid 15 points above the next best grade, on the standardized test at the end. Some bullshit there. Funny thing was, the teacher used the exact same example problems with the same numbers. So I'd shout out answers to questions he was still in the process of writing on the board. Eventually that got the point through to him that I had no business being there, so he just let me do whatever I felt like, as long as I stopped disrupting class. Blistering heat to the point of people passing out. We're all forced to wear black trousers. We're dying of the heart and a guy comes in shorts, gets sent home, only to return after reading the school rules on uniform. He is in a school colors plaid skirt. Ducking legendary. I was in a Christian high school at the time. The day before winter break rolls around, and I had packed a few Toblerone chocolate bars and some notes for the teachers I most appreciated, with the intention of leaving them as a Christmas gift. Before school the principal made a public announcement that students were not to give any teachers any gifts, unless we were going to give all teachers the same gift. This was obviously a bit of a problem, since I couldn't exactly come back the next day with additional candy bars. So I marched into her office to address this issue. Upon entering the office I made a show of opening a chocolate bar and breaking off exactly one piece and placing it on her desk. I told her that I was going to give her a full candy bar, but I now had to share her chocolate bar with other teachers that I didn't really care so much about anyways. That rule was quietly lifted. When I was in grade 7, our last class of the day, students would always bring in snacks. Our lunch shift was way too early in the day, so by the end of the school day we'd all be feeling hungry, and we were all told by our teacher that if we didn't have enough to share we couldn't eat in the classroom. One day, almost all of us brought in enough food to share, even with the students that didn't bring anything in. We even synchronized the times that we pulled all our food out. Our teacher was clueless. She had no idea what to tell us. There wasn't any school-wide no food in classrooms rule, so she couldn't run to the principal. Finally she gave in to our malicious compliance and allowed us to share food for the rest of the period. In my private school boys were required to wear a collared shirt. It really wasn't enforced until one day it was. I was wearing a sweater without a collared shirt underneath, and I had to go back to the dorm and change. I argued that I didn't look ratty or underdressed at all, but they said rules were rules. The next day I wore a white t-shirt with a collar cut off from one of my older shirts, stapled to it. It looked terrible, but rules are rules. Okay, so we need to have clear backpacks, right? This kid puts quite the vulgar image depicting the counselor on one of his notebooks and packs it against the edges of the pack. After 9/11 my school made a rule where we had to wear our schoolids. They went overboard quick handing out detention to anyone who didn't wear one. One kid had his ID blown up and put on a shirt. On the back it said yes I'm wearing my F-King ID. He got detention for not wearing it with the shirt. We had to do that too. But then everyone started using them as weapons and whipping the shit out of each other in the hallway or Indiana Jones snapping it at St. Peter's. It lasted less than a year before they took them away. A kid was passing notes, and the teacher caught him and insisted he had to give the note so she could read it out loud. He ate the note. I was at a private school that had rules about the length of boys' hair. One guy in particular always ignored the rule and the administration would tell him to get a haircut every so often. But he never did. Eventually when his hair got about down to his shoulders the principal pulled him aside and told him his hair was twice the allowed length and by next week it needed to be shortened by half. Monday rolls around and he comes in with half his head shaved and the other side as long as ever. We were impressed by literal interpretation of the principal's request, but it still ended up with him getting a suspension for a week and he had to shave the other side before he could come back. When I was in high school, there was a rule implemented that if you showed up late to school, you had to go to the front office to get a detention slip. You would then have to give it to the teacher for that period, who would then mark it down. And you were required to go to lunch detention for that day. I figured out by the third slip that literally no one cared, teachers, security, or students. So when I was subsequently late for the rest of the year, I would take out an old slip that I had from a previous detention, walk through school, give it to my teacher to mark down, then take it back to give to the lunch detention supervisor. But I never went to detention because the front office didn't have record of me being late. I was late no less than 50 times my senior year, only having been reprimanded the initial 3 times. I even told my parents about it after I had graduated, and even they agreed it was dumb and funny. There was a presentation on vaping last year by some poor woman from an advocacy group or something. After every sentence, or whenever she paused, the whole assembly, all 300 kids in my grade, would give a massive standing ovation. We weren't stopped until we had done it like 15 times. During my senior year of high school, 2008, my school got super strict about cell phones. It got to the point that we weren't allowed to have them out during any point in the day, not even during our lunch period. They claimed that we would send each other test answers or something like that. Anyway, a friend of mine who was a year below me was tired of the rule and how rude teachers were when enforcing it. He literally looked at his phone to check the time and got it taken from him for the rest of the day. That next week he comes to lunch with 2 older/non-functioning flip phones. He takes the first out and pretends that he's talking to someone on it. A teacher was instantly on him. They walk over and hold their hand out for him to give it up. He looks at the teacher and then proceeds to break the flip phone in half and puts it in their hand. The teacher was speechless. She just walked away without saying anything. He takes the second phone out and does the same thing again. The second teacher thought it was pretty funny. Flash forward to 2015, and I start working at the school as a student mentor. And now everyone is allowed to have their phones out pretty much at any time. How things change. Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.